Hello, bonjour, namaste, ni hao, and ohio, everybody. What is going on? It is Gale right here. Welcome back to the YouTube channel once again for another Danmachi Memoria Freese video. And today we're going to be taking a look at the previous Wargames season for both JP and NA. And we're going to be checking out what the top players have been using in their Wargames teams. We're going to be seeing whether or not the top players have been introducing potentially the new Hero Festas into their teams. OTTARL and Alan, that is, of course. And we're going to be just checking out what they've been using leading into familiar war games. Now, of course, if you guys want to enjoy this video, please be sure to leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel for more Danmachi Memoria Freese content, and of course leave a comment down below as well. Let me know, are you guys using the new OTTARL and Alan, and if so, how are you guys finding them? Do you guys like them, dislike them? Are you guys just sticking with your original teams? Let me know in the comment section down below. But yeah, I'm very curious to see what the top players are actually running, because of course in having a look at both OTTARL and Alan, especially in the live stream that we did recently, because we did have a sneak peek at what the players were running in the last couple of hours of the previous season of Wargames. It was noted that a lot of people were running OTTARL. Primarily, a lot of people were running Ailment with OTTARL, of course, right? And it was in partially due to OTTARL, first and foremost. But the second reason was the April Fool's unit in bet. Now, for me personally, I think that bet has just caused a bit of a shift on the NA meta side, at least, right? I don't know how JP has been taking, the new April Fool's bet into consideration, but in all honesty, I feel like on NA, it's just been a huge increase in ailment teams, honestly. It's insane the amount of ailment teams we've been seeing in the last season of Wargames, and I wouldn't be surprised if that continues on for at least another couple of Wargames seasons leading into the anniversary. I genuinely believe anniversary is where we'll get this massive reset, because right now I feel like there's at least like 5 or 6 different Wargames teams running about that are capable of doing a lot of damage to a lot of players. There's ailment, there's stall, there's physical rush, there's magic nuke, there's just so many other options as well, like there's the nullification team, of course, right? So I feel like there's a lot of teams that can be running amok, and as a result, not everybody's able to beat those teams. I had somebody in the comment chat, actually live chat, when I was doing the live stream, asking about how can he break from King 1 into Jester. First and foremost, getting to King 1 alone is a great achievement, in all honesty, because the problem is, right, from King 1 to Jester, it's actually harder to go from King 1 to Jester than it is from Jester to Hero. A lot of top players will actually attest to that as well, because of course at King 1 you're just facing everybody and anybody, right? So there's a higher chance that you're gonna face a random team that you are weak to. Right now I feel like there is no perfect team that can beat everything, right? Right now, if you take one team, they might be able to beat 3 teams out of the 5 teams, let's say, but then they lose to 2 teams, right? And if you face one of those teams, that means you lose points, basically. So it's very difficult to transition from King 1 to Jester. Right now, for the average player, I would say getting to King itself is a very good achievement. Going from King to Jester, you will need to, perfect your assists. You'll need to perfect your rotations and get a little bit of good luck when it comes to the teams you face, honestly. Like me, for example, of course, the team I used was a lot of non-MLB units. So that's my personal reasoning as to why I just couldn't get into Jester. But even if I used my MLB units, it is a little bit of RNG. Sometimes I get into Jester, sometimes I don't. So honestly, be proud in the fact that you managed to get to King, and at least you're gonna get a good set of rewards. Because remember, at King 1 you get 700 Iris, and then if you get to even Jester 1, it's only 30 additional Iris. The big reward jump comes when you get to Hero 2 or Hero 1. So I wouldn't necessarily say you're missing out on much, to be honest, by not getting into Jester and Hero. As long as you're in King 1, you're living a good life, in all honesty. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say at the start of this video, because I felt like a lot of people were getting stressed about the fact that they couldn't break into Jester. But it's a very difficult position. I mean, at King 1, we have 1,100 players, which is a lot more than it used to be. I remember a couple of months ago, before the anime, I do believe it's a combination of the anime hype as well as a couple of returning players and stuff like that. But I feel like, back a couple of months ago, before season 4 started, I remember there used to be like only 600, 700 players in King 1 as well, right? Like, it was really low down. So the more players that the game gets as well, right, the more it's going to get trickier to get into Jester as well. And also, on top of that, this is something I've heard about from another familiar member actually, is that JP went from, I think, 15 to 20,000 players a year or two ago to 30,000 players. So apparently there's just a huge influx of players across all the servers. So it's just going to get harder and harder for players to get into these positions where they're able to breach through certain walls, right? So I would say don't worry, as long as you're in King and whatnot, you will be fine. You will be absolutely fine. So let's take a look at some of the top players now. Let's have a look, see what everybody's running. So we're going to start off with Pew, of course, because Pew is a common, Hero 1 player. And if I'm not mistaken, Pew is still running the same team as he has been. It's a turn 1 magic nuke team. This is something that we actually talked about on live stream. So you can go check out if you want to get into more details about it. But basically, the concept of this team is that on turn 1, Alize is just there to nuke. Now, I can give you guys an example because I tried making a very similar team. Unfortunately, I just don't have the assists to back it up, unfortunately, right? Nor is my Alize +5, so that's also lacking. My backline is a little bit weak as well, to be honest. Of course, I don't have the likes of Artemis or anything of that sort, and my Ryu as well as Lafia, Sword of Rotoria Volume 13 Lafia are both like really low limit breaks. So as a result, I can't really match up to the same level of Pew. But basically, what we can encounter when we go into this fight is that basically you will see Vesta, Lyra, and Althea just basically buffing up the entire field. And then what you see is a huge attack from, of course, the opponent. But of course, you can kind of counter it with a magic team, of course, right here. Of course, this will happen if you're obviously facing off against a team that is basically just faster, of course, due to better assists and stuff like that, of course, right? Because the one thing to note, right, is with Pew running Lyra, right, the anime gacha Lyra at MLB, he's just getting way more of an agility buff, because at only level 60 or at +0, I'm only getting +10 agility, +10% agility to all allies, whereas he at MLB is getting +15% to all allies and +20% agility to self as well, which is really, really helpful. So that is the main team that I was trying to rock towards the end of Wargames. Another team that I was trying to rock is actually a fellow friend of mine's and a fellow follower of somebody who I follow actually got to Jester too, was this Allen team as well. This was something that I was trying to run. I also had really low limit breaks on this team as well. My Allen's +4, Haruhime's +1, and then of course Argonaut and Tiona for me are like +2, so it was really, really tricky. But this is also a really solid team to run as well, of course, right? Because you have effectively a full counter setup. You're basically breaking down the nullifications using Argonaut and Tiona, and then of course you're making sure the agility reduction and agility debuff removal and stuff like that is going with the likes of Haruhime as well as Finn as well. So this is a really good composition as well, and it's something that I really noticed a lot of players running in the lower ranks of Jester and stuff, as well as higher ranks of King as well. Okay, so let's take a look at some other teams. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna take a look at let's take a look at Funlitu's team. Sure, another Hero 1 team, Izanami player, and yeah, this is another team that a lot of people seem to be running, of course, implementing both Allen and OTTARL in. OTTARL as a backline is something that I wasn't considering, but now that I think about it, it's a very good idea because of course of his ability to give 85% P-Res and M-Res. It's a really good option. And then when you bring in Supply Princess Ice from the back, you're getting that extra 2 nullifications against physical attackers. In this position, the front line, basically what you're doing is Allen is used as an agility debuffer, of course, right? And then of course you have Finn to strip away the agility debuffs that is on you as well. And then of course Kaguya going slow first turn, giving that agility to go fast the second turn is really, really handy. So it's again a combination of physical rush meets a little bit of stall in the backline, of course. Very, very good team here. Good idea here. Basically what you're doing here is going fast on the second turn. That's the concept here. Very good team. A lot of nullifications, as you can see in the bottom line, in the assist slide. You've got Ilya in the first slot, which gives 2 times magic null. Artemis in the 4th slot gives 2 times physical null, and then the back 2 give physical null and magic null respectively in slots 5 and 6. Really good setup here. Really, really good setup here. Meant to go the team is meant to basically take its time on the first turn, hence why they have the nullifications to make sure that they don't take too much damage on the first turn, right? So that basically what they do is that on the second turn they're able to hit extremely hard. I mean, we can do a fight against Funlitu. I'm probably gonna lose frame one, I'm probably gonna lose, but let me show you exactly what happens here. Ideally, what would happen here is Vesta goes down because that'll give us the nullifications against the second turn. But let's see. I'm very curious to see if my team can potentially counter this. Of course, unfortunately, due to that didn't go to plan. That didn't really go to plan because Vesta survived, unfortunately. We did get the KO survival, but yeah, that's that's what happens basically. So turn two, you just see a huge onslaught of attacks from the physical team. That's just basically what happens, and as a result, you kind of just topple over effectively against the physical team. I presume a lot of players are running a similar team to that. I'm curious to see. PT Smooth, same exact team. Yeah, I would expect to see a lot of players running that similar team. Very interesting to see a lot of people running the exact same team as that. That's very curious. I wonder if that, I mean, OTTARL, I was not expecting Alan to be that high up, but I'm seeing a lot of top players running him, which is really, really nice to see. I was concerned that Alan would be one of the more easily counterable units, but fair enough for making him work. I must admit, fair enough for making him work. This is also a very interesting team. This seems to be like some sort of physical rush team once again, but of course mixed in with obviously the counter assists as well as just a lot of offense in the front slot basically. I mean, let's take a look and see what we're dealing with here. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to show you guys exactly what the opponents do on turn one so you get an idea of how their setups are. Now, in order, I also had this question in the live stream a couple of days ago actually, is like, how do I sort of, what's the best way for me to basically set up my characters, right? And a lot of people were just basically asking like, okay, is there any way for me to figure out like, I can, a way to know how the best way to set up my characters, what settings should I give them, right? For me personally, the best way to describe it and the best way to do it in all honesty is add a lot of friends, go onto the friends list and add a lot of friends, and then just test, honestly, just test it out against them. Because remember, you can fight against your friends like how I'm doing right here when there's not a war game season. That's the best way to figure out like what settings you should keep your units on. Honestly, we got a win there, of course, but that was a little bit of luck and a little bit of obviously smart adjustment. Well, I didn't adjust anything, but thankfully because of my backline it worked extremely well, of course. But yeah, sometimes you can get around with it, and of course you can beat some Hero 2 teams as well. What I'm gonna do now is we're gonna go down a little bit. I want to check out Lake's team because Lake, of course, is a player I feel like who's done an amazing job previously and in previous seasons of building great teams, and this is another team that I would say is something that I actually kind of see working a lot. And this is a stall team, of course, right? Because what you have here, right, is of course you have the new Luvia anime gacha Ryu, right, who's basically capable of giving elemental resistance to all allies 30% outside of fire. She doesn't give fire resist, so that's something to bear in mind. And then of course OTTARL is giving 85% P-Res and M-Res to himself because 60% through his first skill and then 25% through his passive skill. OTTARL, the Desert OTTARL that we're going to be getting a rerun of in a week's time, is or actually 5 days time now, I think 5 or 6 days time now, is capable of stripping away damage buffs basically from your team. And then of course Astraeus is somebody we know who's great at stall. I do believe Astraeus is a unit though I would probably switch out for maybe Galmus, honestly, because Astraeus gives damage reduction to himself if I recall correctly, and it's one of the reasons why I've placed him so low in my most recent ranking of Hero Festa units, which you can go check out. I made a video on that actually a few days ago. But this is where I would say it becomes a bit interesting because I feel like, of course, OTTARL is a bit of a menace. Honestly, I think he's probably the bigger menace out of the two of Alan and himself, right? So yeah, I think he's gonna be a real annoyance to fight off against. But yeah, that's something to bear in mind. Okay, so we got knocked out there, unfortunate, but we are able to of course counter a little bit here thanks to never mind, it is game over, GG right there. But yeah, a case in point as to why I think the stall team works really well. I do think if you bring in some damage reduction instead with Galmus or something instead of Astraeus, I think that team could have survived turn one easily. Absolutely easily. I want to see if there are any ailment teams in the top ranks potentially. I'm surprised that none of the top rankers are using ailment, because I know that along the way when I was trying to push for Jester and stuff, I was noticing a lot of ailments. I mean, AJ right here is using ailment, but no, I mean OTTARL is in the back line, but I guess he only got him +3, that's why. And I guess also the percentages probably are a little bit low, but I do believe that OTTARL is also a great option because with OTTARL, right? Let me see if I have OTTARL in one of these teams. Actually, no, I don't, but let me just replace him in so that I can show you exactly what he's capable of doing, right? With OTTARL, you are basically guaranteed a taunt infliction on his additional action as well, right? So taunt on foes for only 1 turn. The weird thing is this taunt is only applicable for 1 turn. It doesn't extend for multiple turns, so maybe that's why not many are fans of it, but I feel like at least the taunt, what it does is it guarantees a strip away from the nullifications, which is really handy, of course, right? But he is only getting a 40% chance to stun and then a 40% chance to steal, 40% chance to seal, sorry. So I think that there is that factor, but I feel like it's such a good option. I think people probably should run him in ailment, I feel, for sure. And of course, like I said, I think Bet is an amazing option. I mean, if we were to go into this fight right now, I mean, this team wouldn't really work because there's no null ailments. I'll run this team because it's a 2x null ailment, but I don't have any stun anklets on anybody or anything, unfortunately. So I'm probably gonna see this happen, basically. So obviously, I left myself way too open, and as a result, I'm getting absolutely bombarded by the elements. Charm, slow, seal, stun. I think there was a lot there. I didn't get sealed. I just got sleeped and I got stunned. Now I'm getting sealed. But there you go. So this is what happens when you just get ailmented. And I think there's a lot of people who have been running ailment because I feel like it's probably one of the few teams that you can probably run at very limited limit breaks and still do extremely well, honestly. I think you can still do extremely well. Also, what's a Gale Riot video without Do Not Disturb, of course? So I think the ailment team is also a very good option for players, especially those who don't have high limit breaks, right? Because as long as you can penetrate through the nullifications, you're in a very good position. I think with units like OTTARL, the April Fool's Bet, and then whatever you can gather up, units like Valletta, for example, maybe the Cassandra as well, if you have her, maybe a couple of other options as well, if you do have them, right? And the assist slot, Lena, for example, Lunor, I think you'll be able to make a solid option. Now, what I want to do quickly before we jump to the JP team side of things is I want to check out the popular units ranking. So right now you can see that a lot of players, of course, in this, remember, this was a pre-familiar Wargame season, so a lot of people were definitely trying their hardest to get to the higher ranks. Usually we see the tie, that is to say the tie at the very top, right? Hero 1 tie. Usually it's around the 4,200 mark, but this time around it was clearly at 4,400, which is pretty hefty, I must admit. Pretty hefty, which is a little higher than normal, but again, pre-familiar war games, it makes sense for a lot of players to be trying their hardest here. And you can see that the top units are, of course, featuring units like Nocturnal Elf Ryu, Hero's Destiny Bell. Again, a unit that there's a reason why I put him at number 1, man. I still feel he's a fantastic option for a lot of players. Supply Princess Eyes and Crimson Executioner Elise, Hero Festa Elise, as well as Supply Princess Eyes, giving those nullifications is tremendous. It's basically only second to Nocturnal Elf Ryu, right? And then, of course, you have Finn, who's capable of stripping away the debuffs, the agility debuffs at the end of the turn. Vesta, again, stripping away buffs, basically very similar to Rabbit Star Legacy Bell at the very bottom. And then you have, of course, units like OTTARL, Alan, Lyra, Althea, Ryu. A lot of people, what they do is they try and copy the top teams, which is absolutely something you can try and do, right? Because if you have the options, you should try and copy the top teams if possible. See what you're capable of making. See if you can maybe make replacements, because the best way to play the game and understand the game is if you use the teams yourself and understand what they're capable of doing. I know that, you know, with these skill walls, I made a video on it, with these skill walls and a lot of, you know, text, it's very hard to understand what these units are capable of doing. But you get to experience and understand what they're capable of doing when you only use them. It's like any other RPG, basically, right? Is you see how they become cohesive, how they work together. You know, with the ailment team, it's all about bombarding with the ailments, right? With the physical rush team, the idea is basically making sure the opponent doesn't go first and you go first. So that's why you strip away, you know, any debuffs that's on you through the use of you know, Finn's third skill, basically. Then you obviously have Alan to debuff the agility with his minus 40% agility. Kaguya gives herself agility, but she goes slow, so she goes last, basically. Same with the Bell as well. He has a slow modifier on his first skill, which means he'll go last, but what that means is on the second turn, when he uses his second skill, he will go faster because his agility didn't get stripped away because of like Bell or Vesta. So that's something to bear in mind when you're using these units, is how can you basically counter a team, and how can you optimize your team to work together fluidly. That's the idea here. Again, it takes a little bit of time and understanding, but as I said, this is only realistically applicable if you're struggling between, like, say, battle princess to king, and if you want to push from king to jester. That, because from king to jester, that's when you need to understand, like, okay, what assist do I need to have for what team? Okay, what team should I even build to be able to be cohesive enough to be able to counter as many teams as possible, so that I win most of my matches rather than lose, you know, most of my matches? Because a team that wins, say, for example, 3 out of 5 matches is better than 2 out of 5 matches, right? I mean, that's the basic that's basic maths, right? So that's something to bear in mind. I want to take a look at the assist slot now, because I do feel like I'm surprised. Okay, a lot of ailment units and a lot of, like, nullification units. I mean, that's to be expected, right? Null physical, null magical, with Artemis and Ilya in the top slot, Argonaut for the counter, as well as Tiona. Chigusa, again, nullification of physical. Seer and Astrea, of course, they're for null ailments. I'm surprised at the lack of bet. I feel like in the lower levels, when I was getting up towards king, right, I was noticing a lot more ailment teams. Honestly, I was noticing a lot more ailment teams, and everybody was using bet. It was insane. But I'm surprised we haven't seen any bet here. In terms of ailment, the only unit here is really Talvi, right? Yeah, Talvi is the only ailment unit right here, which is surprising to say the least. I thought Bet would have easily made his way into the top 20 purely because of the fact that, well, you know, very easily accessible unit, very easily plus 5able, and commonly used, I would say, by a lot of players getting up into the top ranks, I would say. So yeah, that's a bit of surprise to me. But yeah, let's take a look at the JP top teams right now and see what they're rocking. So they are effectively rocking a very similar team to the physical rush players, actually. Very similar team. Only changes, I would say, are, if I compare it to Funlitu's team right now, is instead of Kaguya, they are running Fiana and Haruhime. Okay, very interesting options there. So Haruhime, I can see why, because Haruhime would basically do the same thing as Finn, except she does it on turn 2, which is actually, in a way, probably a little bit better, in a way, just in a way, because obviously, actually, would that make sense? Interesting. Now, I can see that. And of course, one thing I noticed is that they've given Fiana a HP anklet that's weak. Interesting. Okay, very interesting team right here for the top players in JP. So this is the first place player, of course. So they're going from top 1 to the very bottom, right? So top 2, again, stall team here, of course. Very interesting to see people still running Astreus. No, wait, is this the right one? Okay, I was just checking the date. Because I wasn't sure if they had taken it from the last snapshot of Wargames, because surprisingly no OTTARL here. Very interesting. Okay, very interesting. Daphne as well. Damn, okay. I know a lot of people skipped out on that Daphne, so I'm very curious to see how people are using her in JP for sure. Again, physical rush team, magic, of course, with light. Okay, so this is where I was, this is something that I mentioned, obviously, when I was reviewing Alicia, of course, right, from this Sword Oratoria Volume 10 event, was that I thought with, you know, with this Alicia, Light Alize would make a huge comeback, especially when you're going up against a team like the second place team with Astreus. It's one of the reasons why I put Astreus a little bit low down in the top 6 Hero Festa units, is because of units like Alicia coming in to counter, and there just being so many other elements to just help out against Astreus, you know. Okay, similar team here. Again, this is the nullification team, basically, because you obviously have both Supply Princess Eyes as well as Hero Festa Elite giving that null physical and null magical ×2 respectively, right? You don't need Nocturnal Elf Ryu if you have these two, basically, and they're attackers as well. They'll deal damage, unlike Nocturnal Elf Ryu, so there is that factor. Again, physical rush team once again. Alright, so a lot of teams are running just physical rush and magic rush, and a couple of different, or I like the variation in units. That's something that I will say I give credit to when it comes to the JP team, JP player base, is like, you don't notice that they're very similar teams, but there are slight adjustments in the assists or the adventure selection, right? I mean, if you take a look at this team versus this team, you can see that there's a bit of a difference with the Bell and Ryu, and the Tsubaki, of course, instead of Fiona and Bell, of course, right? So there is a little bit of variation there. Of course, just like NA, the top players will probably try and use similar teams if possible, just to get, you know, as much of a score in as possible and, you know, become as universal. Now, this team is something that I will have to give credit where it's due. Number 12. Artie, Ryu, OTTARL, Galmas. Now, this is a team that I was thinking of. The only change I would probably make is instead of Artie, I would probably throw in Luvia Ryu, I would say. Because giving that elemental resistance to the entire team outside of fire, along with the fact that anyways, Ryu can give P-Res and M-Res on the second turn, and then of course OTTARL gives himself P-Res and M-Res, and then Galmas gives that damage reduction. This is a stall team and a half, I would say. This is a very good stall team, I would say. Alright, more physical rush. This is a team, of course, our player base is actually using. Very, very similar team here. Okay, then we have, ooh, I haven't seen that Chloe in ages. Let me actually check what that Chloe does. I don't remember that Chloe at all. Let me have a look see. I'm gonna show you guys as well on my end if possible. There we go. Let me have a look see at that Chloe. So that was a thunder. I'm just gonna put let me just go to this actually. Let me do this. Chloe. I don't remember seeing that Chloe. Do I even have her? No, I don't have her actually. When was she when did she release? Last Valentine's? She seems to be from the last Valentine's event. So what did she do? Slow removes STR, agility, and magic res buffs. Ah, I see. Okay, okay. Wow. That is actually really good, honestly. That is actually really decent for the Magic team. Not something I was expecting to see, honestly. Not something I was expecting to see. But fair enough for this player to use a old unit like that to, you know, maximize the Magic team. Honestly, fair enough, fair enough. Absolutely fair enough. Okay, interesting. Very interesting stall team right there as well. So let's go down a little bit. I'm going to go down to top 25 now if possible. Let's go to the top 25. Let's go to the 25th spot because I think a lot of the teams are pretty similar there. Okay, now this is a good team actually. Again, no damage reduction here, not overemphasizing on the damage reduction. I feel like what a lot of players do, right, is they try and figure out like a sweet spot so they don't have to overload on the defense, because maybe overloading on defense too much is also a problem, right? Again, stall players can let me know on their thoughts regarding this, because I feel like, you know, maybe you guys don't want to overload on stall too much because it can be a problem. But anyways, there's a reason why a lot of players run like War Princess's ear cuff. Something you guys might have noticed is the low HP counts on some of these units. What they do is they give these units War Princess's ear cuffs so that they're basically acting as sort of sacrificial units. Because what you want to do in this sort of situation is you want to remove those units so that basically units coming in from the back are capable of stripping away buffs, giving HP, giving more assist buffs, basically stuff like that. Basically you want to try and do that while also taking advantage of their skills nonetheless. So Luvia Ryu, what she'll do is she'll effectively use her first skill, which gives all those elemental resistances. Then she leaves, brings in Raul basically. Raul also lives only for one turn because he only has 959 HP and then leaves once again. So this is exactly what happens in these Wargame seasons. It's very, very interesting to say the least. Very, very interesting. So let's scroll down a little bit, see what everybody's running. A lot of people are still running, you know, Shadow Elf Ryu as well, who's still a very solid option. But yeah, the teams are now becoming more or less similar with just slight changes here and there. Some people still running the Magic team that was being used a couple of months ago in NA. But yeah, you have to remember that with JP, it's a lot more competitive because, again, like I said, they have a huge player base compared to NA or any other region. I think JP as a whole is much larger than every other nation, every other server combined. It's one of the reasons why we probably should consider combining all the other servers, in all honesty. But that's something for them to decide. WFS, that is. We will never be able to do that. But yeah, it would lead to so it's very interesting to see how much how much more populated JP is. But yeah, these are the teams that JP is running. Let's take a look at their most used adventurers. So these are the adventurers, of course. You can see right here, very similar, very, very similar, just some slight changes. I think the biggest noteworthy change here, I would say, compared to NA, is Light Elise. Light Elise is like at the bottom of the page here for us, but she is in the top 10 for JP, which is very, very interesting. Outside of that, of course, Haruhime is as well as more used on JP as well. Artie is not at all in our top 20 actually. She's no longer in the top 20 for us on NA, but she is in the top 6 basically for JP, which is really, really good, I guess, for her. Outside of that, I'm trying to have a look and see if there's any other odd addition here. Valletta as well is not in the top 20 for us at all. That's very interesting. That is very interesting. But yeah, that's the adventurers. You can obviously compare it to yourselves. If you can open up your game, go to unit popularity, you can compare it to yourself and see what it is. Obviously, EU is also going to be a little bit different. You guys can check it out there. I'm curious to see what the assist side is looking like. Estrella, Chigusa, Artemis, Ilya, Ariadne seem similar. The top side seems similar. Wow, okay, so on NA, Seer is in the top 5, but on JP, she's basically in the last positions, like top 25, basically. Very interesting, very, very interesting. Alan as well is much lower on JP than he is on NA, which is also very curious. The Alan at the very bottom. The new Alan that was part of Valhalla Panic is pretty high up as expected, to be honest. Outside of that, I would say Bell is also an odd one out. The Bell over here in 16th position, the Eyes in Wonderland Bell, of course Rabbit Bell, that is something that's not on NA. Riveria is not on NA as well, so I guess people were maybe testing out. I'm very curious if people were probably testing out the magic counter team, of course, right? Because that's something that is something that you can actually do now, of course, right? Is you can have the Cassandra from the anime Gacha as well as this Riveria, and you can set up like how Tiona and Argonaut are with physical counters. You can set up a magic counter team, but I think it's still a little bit inefficient at this point in time, especially with the way the teams are set up and what the assist skills are, of course, right? With Riveria not necessarily being a great addition because dark res down. There's not many dark magical AoE units right now in the game, dark magic wargames units, so probably that's why it's a little bit lower down. Whereas Argonaut, of course, with the light units still running amok quite a bit, right, with the likes of Fianna, Bell and Finn running about. Then you of course have thunder units as well now, like Alan and Finn, for example, right? So that's something to also bear in mind. Very interesting though. Outside of that, it looks very similar for the most part in terms of the popularity list, but the teams itself on JP are a tad bit different to what we run on NA for sure. But yeah, let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section below. Can you guys make some of these teams? Maybe you guys might want to try it for the Familiar Wargames season that's starting next week. Let me know in the comment section down below. Of course, if you guys go on to enjoy this video, if you guys did enjoy this video, I should say, please be sure to leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take it easy, everybody. Bye-bye.